Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I'm so happy that you're here. Before we get into things, I have to mention, because my production team is constantly on me, if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, please, when you're done listening to this, would you just take a minute, head on over to YouTube, click the subscribe button. We've actually been getting a lot of people who have been watching our show on YouTube. And we love that. I mean, any way that you guys want to consume this content is fine for me. So again, appreciate you guys doing that. We're always saying like, share, follow. YouTube, don't want to forget about them. Now, back to today's show. So you guys are in for a treat because we have a really, really fun guest, and I personally adore her. So joining me is Caitlin McCandless, and Caitlin and I met because she's actually a health and fitness coach at the gym where I work out. But when I started going to the gym, we were talking and I started following her, and I noticed she's like posting all these like amazing healthy recipes on her Instagram. And I'm like, is she just doing this for fun? Is she just doing it because she works at the gym? And so we got into this conversation, and she started telling me about her background in nutrition and all the work that she's doing. And I was like, I need to have you come on my show, because meal planning, health, grocery, nutrition, like all of it's intertwined with living an organized life. And so she said yes, which I'm so grateful for. And I'm so happy to share her with all of you guys. So without further ado, let me welcome my friend Caitlin to the show. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hi, Lori. How are you?
How are you? It's so funny. We're actually seeing each other in like regular clothes, because normally we're both in workout clothes. Mine isn't that far from the door, but
no, you look more put together than I do. I was at the gym this morning, so this is just like a change t-shirt for me. I'm like,
oh my gosh. Well, Caitlin like I said, she's adorable. And I just, in addition to all of the things that, I see her do on the daily, there's a whole like backstory to her personally and professionally, and with her clinical studies in science, nutrition. And we actually did an episode not too long ago about diet and nutrition, and we got a huge response. So I know that this is an area that people, specifically women, really, really are craving. And so anybody that can come in and share light on ways to simplify, streamline, and even just give us some insight is so warranted. So just tell everybody a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah. So, again, I'm Caitlin, and I have been in the health and like fitness industry for, this is going to sound really weird, but like 11 years, and I'm only 25.
I know she's a baby. I'm like old enough to be her mom. Okay.
But I started in a gym when I was 14. I like worked in a kids club, and I had absolutely no interest in pursuing anything health related at that point in my life. Obviously didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't grow up in a household where like nutrition or exercise or living a healthy lifestyle was really talked about at all. So I was thrown into this at 14, kind of like little just side job thing. And I really grew into it. And then I worked up to the front desk, and then I started coaching, and now I manage our one location. And I've been at the same place for 11 years. So it's been quite a journey, which has been cool because I've gotten to see so many people grow, as well as like, I'm sure so many people have seen me grow from a child to like now a married adult, which is weird. But I also have my degree in nutrition and dietetics. So I graduated from Westchester University in Pennsylvania, and I am obsessed with all things food, nutrition, by the way, if you have an interest in dietetics and you think you're going to school to like learn about food for like fun food all day, you're not. It's a very heavy science degree. It's
It's
no joke.
so much science. It's
So
so
much.
much science. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I had roommates who were like like in teaching and education and everything, and they had like, just fun little projects, and not that it wasn't work, because it for sure was, but they would be like, why are you going out? And I'm like, because I have like 18 tests next week, so it was no joke at all. But I love my degree because it not only helps me help other people, but it really helped transform my life, because when I went to school to study dietetics, I kind of thought I knew it all, and like thought I had this perfectly healthy relationship with food and was just thriving. And then I got there and realized I knew absolutely nothing, and that I was actually living an extremely disordered relationship with food and exercise. And so a lot of that transformed through my, as I was going through my undergrad. And then now I really help shine light on that for other women too. So I'm a huge advocate for like food freedom and anti-diet approach. So yeah.
And when we were talking about just the show in general, you were like, I have an idea to talk about like streamlining your grocery shopping. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, bring it on. Because as anybody knows, men or women, that grocery shopping could be the bane of your existence. And I'm not even talking about the financial part of it now, which adds a whole other layer of everything's just so flippin' expensive.
Seriously.
But just what should I make? What should I get? And I'm a healthy shopper, like I always have been. I mean, I was crazy. I was crazy when my kids were growing up. I would be like, we shop the perimeter, we don't shop the cancer aisles. Like my kids are crazy, like living with a crazy person. But people still they waste food. They buy stuff that they don't use. They think they're going to use them, or there's a lot of frustration that I see. And for lack of a better word, disorganization around the whole process, from what do I buy to how do I incorporate it, use it, and really kind of maximize my grocery dollars and the products for like to make my life simpler. And so I thought that was a great topic, and just kind of let you take it away.
Yeah, well, I think even what you just said there about like disorganization around grocery shopping, and a lot of what you talk about is how much easier it is to stay organized when we've simplified. And like when I talk to a lot of people who, whether they are just starting their health journey and want to start eating healthy, or even we could throw exercise into this, we have a tendency to think we have to go like 0 to 100. So if you're currently not eating any vegetables, or eating a pretty highly processed food diet, and then think like next week you're going to just dive in, buy all this stuff and going to use it, you're probably going to throw most of it away, which again is a waste of your money, but also your time, your energy, and you're probably just going to be hungry and angry all day long.
Frustrated. Like it's, you see people get frustrated because they have these intentions, like the best of intentions, that I'm going to do all of these things, and yet they don't either know the best approach to doing it or how to simplify the process. Because again, cooking and buying and eating healthy is more time consuming than buying something that comes just like out of a box or a container.
Yeah. Well, I think that, a lot of things, one of the big things that I work with people on is how we can create convenience around what is originally maybe a less convenient food. So like, it is easier to pop something in the microwave from like the frozen food section for lunch every day, because you don't have time to cook lunch on a daily basis. Maybe you're running between jobs, or you're taking your food to work with you every day. But if we can create almost like our own convenient food by just doing a little bit of meal prepping on Sunday, all of a sudden what was like a super complicated, you don't have to make a super complicated meal every single day for every single lunch or dinner, whatever you're doing. You can make it ahead of time, and then all of a sudden you have fresh, healthy food that is still convenient for you.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and we talk about that a lot here. Like I'm a big Sunday meal prepper
Mhm.
and I talk about that and I cook in parts. Like I always say I cook
Yes.
in parts here
Like
because
component prep.
correct.
Yes.
Because I've got Josh who's a vegan and I like to
Oh,
eat chicken.
okay.
So I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. So if I'm making stuff and then I'll be like, I'm going to grill up a bunch of chicken. I can throw it in a salad. I could make a tortilla out of it, like a
Mhm.
burrito, whatever, or
Yeah.
we just have vegetables or stir fry or whatever we want to do. So I found that's a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead. Sorry.
And no, I was gonna say, I think that like this one size fits all idea of meal prep is like the furthest thing from the truth because when I first started meal prepping, I was seeing like on Pinterest, like, oh, these like perfectly laid out Tupperware containers. And the reality was I was throwing away so much food. And I was in high school, honestly, like when I started doing some variation of this. And I was throwing away a lot of food because, first of all, I was not even making food I like really actually wanted to eat. And second of all, I was bored by like the third day. And then I was like, I don't want that again. So I would just toss it versus if you're doing like meal component prep and you have chicken that's ready to go and accessible, you can quickly add that to different combinations. So it feels like you have some variety throughout the week, but you're just using that chicken that maybe you grilled up really quickly on a Sunday night. So it's like less boring, but takes a lot of the work out in the moment.
A lot of things I hear from people surrounds their like what's the word I'm looking aversion that was their aversion
Mm-hmm.
to leftovers. See, and
Yeah.
that's not like a big issue. Like I get bored of things. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
had it, I may have something like one time, but like I get bored. I don't want to have it like 3 days in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find personally, if I cook in parts, I don't have that same thing because it's like
I agree.
I'm applying the chicken one way this day, one way another day. And even though I'm having the same ingredients, I'm putting a different spin on it. And I'm
Agreed.
wondering if that's kind of a trick or a hack or something that you recommend, because that's a common thing. If my kids don't eat leftovers, or I don't eat leftovers, or my spouse
Mm-hmm.
doesn't eat, and then that's where a lot of food waste comes in because
For
you're
sure.
buying for things. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think like one of my kind of go-to tricks is first of all, sauces. I love like getting sauces or dressings and changing up variety there. One of my favorite brands is called Primal Kitchen.
Love Primal Kitchen.
I'm obsessed. There's so many good flavors. Buffalo sauce though, I could put on everything. So good. But if you have like a meal like chicken and rice, and then maybe you're just subbing a different vegetable every day or for each day of the week for lunches and adding a different sauce, then like it feels like something different. I also think it feels less like leftovers when you're taking the minute to like take some of this out of this container and put it into a bowl and take some of this out of this container and put it into a bowl. And okay, I'm going to steam up some veggies fresh and add that to my bowl, and then I'm going to put sauce on it. It feels less like a leftover than if I was to just literally put a Tupperware container in the microwave and like take it out.
Yeah.
In my head, that's like how it's spinning for me. But sauces, seasonings, if you're making like 2 pounds of chicken for the week, don't be afraid to season half of it with one thing and half of it with another thing. It takes 5 seconds to just pick up a different seasoning container. Same with veggies, like, if you're going to make a head roasted veggies, do multiple types and maybe for a few days you're doing this type, or for a few days you're picking a little bit of each from this. And so you have variety there. I think that really helps. And then I also think that for me, just like looking for new ways to use a recipe. So I make this enchilada skillet almost every single
You
week.
guys have to follow her, by the way. We're going to link to Caitlin
Yes.
all her things, which you guys know if you're like familiar with our show. We link to everybody, but I'm telling you, I'm like, dude, are you reading a recipe book? I mean, because she has the most incredible, and they're all like healthy and delicious.
And easy. Like I honestly take a lot of inspiration from two of my favorite places are Rachel's Good Eats. If you don't follow her, she's awesome. And Ambitious Kitchen. Those are two places I am often getting recipe inspiration from. I love Rachel because she does like a lot of very simple recipes and simple ingredients that are like used in multiple variations across different recipes. So, and we'll get into that too of like
Yeah,
ways to simplify
I
your
totally
diet.
cut you off. I want to hear about your enchilada, but I had to tell
Yeah.
everybody. So go
No,
ahead. You were saying about your
I was gonna
enchilada meal.
say, yeah, so I have that like an enchilada skillet, and like sometimes I'll eat it with rice, but sometimes I'll take the same thing and make like tacos with it. So like it's the same food, but I'm just thinking of maybe a different way I can use it. Or if I do burgers, like sometimes I'll eat it on a bun, but sometimes I'll cut it up and mix it into a bowl, and it's almost just like little meatball type kind of situation. So you can take the same food and use it in a variety of different ways, and just kind of getting creative with that, I think can really help as well.
I love it. I actually just did this past weekend. So we had friends over for dinner, these two other couples, and I made kebabs on the grill. So I did some just plain veggies for Josh, and I did some chicken and veggies for us. And I had bought, like, if anybody's ever like cut up vegetables for a kebab, like you realize I had like all these extra vegetables because they take up so much space. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all these extra like pre-cut prepped vegetables.
Yeah.
So I put them, the ones that weren't used, in a Tupperware container. And I was like, I'm going to do stir fry this week. And so because immediately I was like, oh, I thought like, do I just grill them up? Do I not? And I was like, no, I'm not going to want, there was a lot of them. I'm like, but I could so I did like a teriyaki stir fry.
Yeah.
And it was great because it was another way completely. And all the prep was done. I just had to throw it in a skillet, marinate them. So it was awesome because I had already,
don't have to work.
Correct.
Yeah. No, that's actually a great hack. Like sometimes I will even, let's say we're making like meatballs or something like that. I will literally like split it in half because I'm like, maybe I don't want meatballs for more than just tonight. Like tonight we're doing pasta and meatballs. I don't know what I want to do with this yet. Maybe I'll do burgers, but like I will make an entirely different thing with the other half of the meat or vegetables. Like if I'm buying a bunch of different peppers, like I'll cut them all up, like you said, and then sometimes I'll use half in a recipe and I'll put half in the fridge to put in eggs in the week. And they're just like there and ready to go.
So let me ask you a question about your grocery list. And obviously, you're just for context, you're newly married. It's just you and your husband and your doggies. So you don't have kids. And I understand, folks, when you've got humans at home that are finicky and picky, like it does complicate things. Even if you're not a short order cook, it absolutely complicates things. I totally get it. But do you pretty much have like your staple grocery items that you shop for every week? Because I think that's also a big frustration for a lot of people is like, what do I buy? What do I make? They either aren't meal planning, so they're going to the grocery store and just buying stuff reactively, or they are going to the grocery store every single day. And that for me, years ago, I was like, that is no bueno. I am going once a week. And on the rarest of occasions, if I have to stop in for something, but like I will do everything I can to not go to the grocery store more than once a week. So do you, and there are people probably listening going, what? How could that be? But I think with intention, or I know for a fact, with intention, it's doable because I raised my family. I raised my family doing that. Yeah. So do you pretty much have the same things like we know, but then maybe you add in a few new things here and there? How do you approach that?
Yeah. So I can honestly kind of like walk you through like my thought process every Sunday. So the first thing I do is take inventory of what I already have, because I'm looking at fresh food that like needs to be used up, and B, looking at pantry items, because sometimes I find like the pantry items for me are what get a little bit expensive if I'm buying nuts or if I'm buying a nut butter or a different sauce. Like, so if I have stuff that needs to be used, I'm like, okay, how can I use this? A, to get rid of it, and B, to not have to buy another product and maybe save $5 on my grocery list for the week. So I look at what I have, and then I will kind of look, first I'll look for some inspiration. I, again, like to go to a couple different recipes or blogs specifically, but I also will kind of look through my Instagram feed. I, follow some people. I'm like, oh yeah, like maybe that sounds good this week. and looking for recipes that I can kind of incorporate some of the things I already have. And then I break it down into like breakfast meal ideas, and then lunch and dinner I usually group together, and then snack ideas. So I will literally plan like 1 to 2 breakfast ideas. And this doesn't have to be a super complex recipe. It can literally be me saying like, okay, I'm going to eat, overnight oats for a few days this week. And I'm going to do eggs and some cut up veggies and an English muffin the other days. Like that could be kind of my plan, super rough. And then lunch and dinner, I have some staples. Like we almost always do salmon once a week, and usually we do potatoes and like a veggie, and then I'll pick 2 recipes. So I'll have some variety there. And then snacks, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna do yogurt one day, or pretzels and hummus, or veggies and hummus. Like I'll just pick really simple concepts. So it's not this like over the top explosion of like recipes that I need to go buy a million ingredients for, but just keeping a few different ideas in mind in categories, and I will write them down. So I can formulate a list, and then also so that I have it on my fridge when it's like the middle of the week and I'm like, I have nothing to eat. And then I'm like, wait a second, I got stuff to make.
Oh, I love that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
guys, that right there is so gold.
Yes.
Post your list, and especially for people that have other humans in the house, because how many times have you said or heard there's nothing to eat here? And having that list of this is what's available to you, like front and center for all of our visual learners, is such a good thing. I love that. Yeah.
It really helps because when it's getting to dinner time and you're like kind of hangry, the last thing I'm really thinking about is like rationally like, oh, what can I make from what I have in the fridge? So
yeah,
when I have it written down, I'm like, oh yeah, right. I got, stuff for burgers, and I also had gotten these veggies to use up with it. Like, okay, cool. Like, I don't even have to think about it now. So that really helps me. And it also helps from just like the planning perspective too. I can't say never, because I'm sure I have before, but I really try to never go to the grocery store without a list. And usually 1 or 2 extra things will end up in the cart. But for the most part, we're buying exactly what we're going for, because I'm buying within the needs of what I plan on making for the week.
I love it. What about, what are your thoughts on like substitutions with spices? Like I see people's grocery stuff get crazy because they read a recipe and it might call for something that is not in your normal staple of things.
Yeah.
And so I see this from the organizing perspective. If I go into someone's home and I'm like looking in their pantry and I find all of these like expired spices that are practically full, right? Barely used. And it's because they bought A, B, and C for a recipe. They did it once, and then it like lived in the pantry to die. Yeah. And so I'm just wondering, especially since you are somebody that practices healthy eating and you're always kind of making fresh meal prep, like how do you address that?
Yeah, so that's actually something I love to talk to people about, because sometimes I'll pick recipes and my husband will like do the cooking, and he'll be like, wait, we don't have blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, we have this and it's like similar. So just use that. And I do that all the time, whether it be like spices. I'll even look up like, let's say it calls for, I don't know, like even a taco seasoning. Like if it calls for taco seasoning, I will look up like what is the seasonings that make up taco seasoning, and then I'll use that. Or what's a similar spice seasoning that compares to this that I could use that I already have. And same with
I did it last week with coconut oil. I was doing a recipe, and we often have coconut oil, but I haven't. Yeah. And I was just doing a recipe that I didn't read before that I was going to do it. And I was like, and I was already in the midst of it. And I was like, oh, shoot, I don't have coconut oil. What can I substitute? And I just substituted, and it was fine. Like, but Yes.
I do that all the time. And like, yeah, pantry items like beans, like, okay, if it calls for black beans, but I have a thing of pinto beans to use up, like for the most part, it's going to be fine. Like use up what you have. And that does go back to as well, like taking inventory before maybe pick your recipes for the week or go grocery shopping. How can I use what I have? Is extremely helpful. And for the most part, like baking is where it can get a little bit tricky, maybe. But when you're cooking recipes, I've never really had a flop. So, and I've substituted things pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could not agree more. And that's why I'm not a master baker, because I know that there's a precision with baking that when you're cooking a regular recipe, it could have a little bit more forgiveness because you can modify it. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back. We're going to finish this conversation or pick it up. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the specific work that you're doing, specifically with women who are having some hormonal imbalances. And we can talk a little bit about that as well. So sit tight. All right. So before we kind of switch gears, I want to just, I want people to walk away feeling like I have a plan of how I can not make something that I have to do all the time a burden or stressful, and make it hopefully enjoyable, but at the very least, like tolerable, and maybe something that it's easy for everybody to get involved in. So for people that are listening out there that don't want all the responsibility to fall on them for meal planning, all that, are there any recommendations that you have for them?
Yeah. So do you mean like getting like the kids and family?
It could be anything. It could be anything. It could be from centralizing your how and where you make your lists, to letting the kids pick a meal or whatever. Anything that you think could be take the burden off of one person doing all the heavy lifting, because I think that's a big area where a lot of people struggle, is they feel like, again, meal prep can be like drinking from a fire hose, because it's always happening every day. We're waking up, and even if you're like, I'm going to order in or eat out once or twice, like periodically, the majority of your meals, you still have to grocery shop. So
yeah, I think making it a household thing is like, my husband and I, there are many weeks where I feel like a big load, and I'm like, hey, can you come up with some ideas? And communication. I was just listening to another episode of yours, and you were talking about communication. And I'm always like, hey, like I can't think of anything right now. Like, can you please think of something? Or what are some go-to meals that you like that I make that we can do this week? Like, getting the other people involved, it also helps them they're more likely to probably eat the foods that you're making if they're playing some part in what they're eating. So, if you're going to make some crazy thing and no one really wants it, then that can be really even more frustrating. But also just, if you are kind of coming into this and new to meal prepping and, maybe wanting to start eating healthier, again, you don't have to do an overhaul in like a week. And starting really small, when I'm working with clients, I always say, like, start with one meal. Like, where is one meal in your day that is the most overwhelming or maybe unpredictable? Maybe it's lunch because you're never home for that. Like, maybe this week you're just focusing on how you can make lunches better, and you're meal planning and meal prepping for just lunches. If the rest of your grocery shop is just throwing whatever you want in the cart, okay, like we'll get to that later, but let's just narrow it down to lunches and start there. I think that really helps people to get started, and also just to do a clean out.
It's true. Get rid of all the expired stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. And stuff you don't like, because I've used stuff for recipes before, or like nuts, like something I didn't like, and it's just sitting in the back of the pantry because I'm like, oh, I'll use that. But I've not come back to it because I didn't like it. So just get rid of it.
Right. It's so true. It's so true. And again, it's you look at the parallels between food and organizing your physical things. And again, there's so many similarities, because if you're, again, embracing a new way of, I want to eat healthier, I want to do more strategic cooking and planning, but you have developed, poor unhealthy habits for whatever reasons,
Years.
no
Yeah.
shame. You can't expect to just fix it overnight. And the same with people who have lived in a disorganized space because they never were taught the tools of how to navigate and streamline and simplify. You can't just expect it all to go away. You have to just start small and incorporate these little healthy habits and get that under your belt before you can add on new ones. And it is doable. And I really think, and I know we've done episodes about it before, I think depending on the ages of your children, I think getting them to be part of that process, whether it's access to the grocery list, putting the things on, picking meals that they like, again, saying, okay, it's, you can pick one meal this week and so can pick a meal. Or if they're old enough and they want to even participate in the prepping and cooking of it, that's great, whether it's with you that they're doing it or for you and saying, hey, tonight you're cooking dinner if they want to, and you feel like that this is something that works for your family. The more that you empower the other people to be part of the process, I think it is also going to relieve us so much of that mental load.
Yeah, I also think with sharing healthy eating habits with kids, that them being a part of the process of cooking vegetables and I mean, I've even seen, and I would love to do this, I would love to have a garden in our yard. We don't really have the space right now, but having the kids be a part of that process from start to finish really does empower them to try these foods. And I think that comfortability that comes along with, taking it from its raw form and creating a dish with it, it's like, oh, this isn't so scary. It was just a pepper. And now it's just in our food and we're going to eat it. And it's not as scary versus when mom puts a huge pile of plain broccoli on your plate and you're like, eat this. That's not enjoyable at all for a kid.
Right. And I think, again, there are so many ways. And if food or cooking is intimidating to you, that's also another reason why I think a lot of people might struggle, because if you don't enjoy cooking, then experimenting, I happen to love cooking and I love trying new things and just, again, okay, I'm going to try this. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, I won't do it again. And more often than not, it works. Just kind of Josh will go, where did you get this recipe? I'm like, I don't know. I made it up in my head. And it's just, again, and I use the same simple ingredients over and over and over again. So
I actually want to even say too about the simplifying and streamlining things. When it comes to vegetables, don't be afraid to buy frozen. I think frozen is such a great way to start to introduce vegetables, because a lot of people's barrier to consumption is that preparation process. So we bring home all this produce and it's that requires you to wash it, chop it, figure out a recipe to put it in, versus if you are buying it frozen, which is oftentimes more nutrient dense than the fresh product you're getting off the shelves because it's frozen at peak of ripeness. It's that barrier of access is way smaller, because now all I have to do is take a frozen, already chopped up veggies and put it into something. And that's a great form of convenience food. If we're talking about how healthy food can be convenient, sure, in the frozen food aisle, there's a ton of other meal options, but you can also grab the frozen veggies and think about how we can add that to our meals, because that's super convenient.
Oh my God, such a great tip. I love it. Can we switch gears, just because I think there's this whole other interesting part and it is all intertwined, but I just think that you could probably really help a lot of people out there. So you and I have had many conversations about me complaining about my own hormone imbalances, because whatever, it's just a struggle. And you started talking to me about how you do a lot of work with women who have PCOS, and that's a thing. And so I was wondering if you could just, for some people who aren't familiar with what that is, just explain a little bit about what that is and how it impacts women and the work that you're doing.
Yeah. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, which implies that there's cysts on your ovaries, but there's not. It's basically multiple underdeveloped eggs that are lining the ovary, and it looks almost like little cysts or little pearls. And so that's where the name comes from, but it is basically the result of an imbalance in hormones. And in this case, we have excess androgens, which are male sex hormones. So that excess of male sex hormones is why we are not, our eggs are not fully developing. And it can cause a variety of different symptoms, like really bad facial acne is one, kind of thinning and receding hairline or unwanted hairs, difficulty losing weight related to insulin resistance, and like fertility, irregular periods, stuff along those lines as well.
How do people find out that they have it? I mean, is there a specific test that people go on, and can you get it at any age? Just, for people that are listening that aren't familiar.
Yeah. So you would speak to your gynecologist about it, and there's some blood tests that they would run, and they would look for excess androgen levels or excess male testosterone. And then you would also fall into multiple symptoms such as, again, the acne, hair loss, irregular periods, which are like longer than 35 days. So you would need to fall within a few of those categories to be diagnosed. And then also an ultrasound. You can get an ultrasound and you would see visibly like the underdeveloped eggs along the ovary. The one thing I will say with that is, like, with younger women, if you're in your late teens, it's not uncommon to have underdeveloped eggs along your ovaries because we're still kind of going through some of these hormonal changes at that age. So that couldn't be like a try and true test at that point. You would definitely want to get your androgen levels tested, and you would show some pretty noticeable, again, signs and symptoms associated with it.
And so talk a little bit about the link between nutrition and PCOS, because we were talking about your coaching practice, which we're going to get to and link up for anybody that is interested in learning more about the work that you're doing. You were telling me that you are doing a large emphasis of helping women specifically that are struggling with PCOS.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fascinating whenever you could talk about how we can use foods to, whether it's heal or treat or reduce symptoms of different things. So just, I think this is valuable insight.
Yeah. So, a little bit about my background. And there are many women who are in a similar situation that can attest to similar experiences within the medical system. I was 18 when I was diagnosed, and I was given, first of all, I didn't know what questions to be asking or how to be advocating for myself. And almost immediately they're just like, here, go on birth control, take metformin. I wasn't put on metformin specifically, but that is a really common one for managing insulin resistance, which is really common with PCOS. So for many women, they're diagnosed and the doctor basically gives them medication and they're like, you need to lose weight in order to, that'll help your PCOS. And then we're like, how do I do that? They're like, well, cut carbs, exercise more. Literally the most unhelpful information that you could possibly get.
It sounds like when I went to my doctor and I was like, I'm going through menopause and I'm gaining weight. And they were like,
eat less.
Exercise. They were like, eat less, exercise more. And I'm like, there's not helpful information. It's not like I'm sitting here eating a pint of Ben & Jerry's every single night sitting on my butt.
It's so unhelpful. And it's unfortunate because, many women are not getting the support that they deserve from their doctors and their medical team. And in many cases are dismissed, when I even, because I'm sometimes nervous about bringing these things up to doctors anymore, because I don't feel like having the argument of, no, how can I what can I do lifestyle wise to manage this? And I fully believe that medicine has a place, a time and a place, and can be super beneficial. But can we also talk about how we can implement lifestyle changes that can maybe work in tangent with that medication, and maybe we're on less of it, and maybe it's working more effectively because we're making lifestyle changes. And those aren't conversations that are necessarily being had in the like with physicians. And it's very frustrating for a lot of women, myself included. But one of the biggest causes, root causes of PCOS is insulin resistance. So if you're not familiar,
are you more prone to be diabetic? Well, my husband,
yes.
Josh, is a type 1 diabetic. And
Yes.
so I know a lot about type 1 diabetes
Mhm.
because of living with him. But so that's what I did not, because I don't know a ton about PCOS specifically.
Yeah. So you are more prone to become type 2 diabetic because you are more prone to be insulin resistant. And so that is a very common encounter for women with PCOS who aren't getting the help that they need. And that's why metformin is a big medication that's prescribed for helping to manage that. But there are so many dietary and lifestyle changes that you can make that can significantly impact your insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, and like to help manage chronic stress that can have drastic results when it comes to reversing or managing your PCOS and reversing a lot of your symptoms. So that is what I work primarily with women, is to reverse insulin resistance, which is the root cause for over 70% of women with PCOS. So it's really up there. And some of the other causes could be inflammation. Post-pill, coming off of birth control can actually trigger PCOS. Usually, if you had it before, birth control covered up all these symptoms. And then when you come off it, it's terrible.
Interesting. Yeah. So, because I was going to say, so it's not so much that the pill caused it, it just kind of masked it.
It masked it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So then, when you're 18 and put on birth control, and because you were having irregular periods, some of your PCOS symptoms were coming up, they put you on birth control, you're on it for 10 years. And then let's say you decide, okay, I'm ready to start a family. You come off it thinking like, oh, you're going to get pregnant, but you're probably not ovulating during that. Well, you're not ovulating, but like your body isn't going to necessarily just jump into that. It needs to do the healing before you're going to be able to get pregnant, because for the last 10 years, you've been basically covering up all of the symptoms associated with your PCOS by taking hormonal supplementation. So that's a big one. And adrenal. So stress can also be a huge factor in PCOS. That's like, for me, a really big one. Managing my stress levels, which
is like, it's like laughable, but because we hear this all the time about managing stress with anxiety and depression and all of these things at PCOS. And as women, as whether you're a mom or you're not a mom, like life is stressful, life is hard, life is, there's so much, whether it's emotional struggles, financial struggles, just worrying about your kids, whatever it is. It's almost, again, when people are like, well, just have less stress or less.
Yeah, no.
And that's one of the reasons why, obviously, I'm a big proponent of simplifying and decluttering, because there's that correlation there. So what are some of the strategies that you use to help those lifestyle factors? We know about the nutrition, but what about the other stuff?
Well, from a nutrition perspective, like, we specifically work on learning to create balanced meals, which include protein, fiber, and fats. So every single meal, we're learning, first of all, what foods are contributing to each of these categories. And second of all, how we can create certain ratios of that will help to lower our blood sugar, so that we're not having these really high insulin spikes. Because insulin spikes are what is going to increase more testosterone production. And so then you have more symptoms of PCOS. So if we can regulate those glucose spikes and then therefore produce less insulin, we can help to reverse some of those PCOS symptoms there. And that's a long haul. Like, that's every meal. It's not going to be perfect, but really teaching these women how to strategize, picking certain components of your meal and having it with every meal so that you are better balancing your blood sugars. But some other things that kind of go along with that are exercise, which, I'm a huge supporter of. But like strength training is extremely beneficial for women with PCOS. And not just implementing any sort of strength training, but implementing a type of exercise that you enjoy, because that's what's going to, we're here for the long haul. Like if you don't like the exercise you're doing, if you don't like the classes you're going to, or whatever it is, you're not going to be consistent with it. So including some strength training, and then managing stress levels, good sleep routines, some supplementation comes into there as well, because there are nutrient deficiencies that can be associated with PCOS as well. But yeah, just honestly, I take a whole like lifestyle kind of swap for people. So we look at a little bit of everywhere in your life.
I love it. And I know that there's probably women that are listening out there that are going, everything you said is like intimidating and overwhelming, because it might be so counterintuitive to the way that they live now.
Yep.
Right. For a variety of reasons, whether it's circumstance, whether it's just, again, what you were exposed to growing up, whatever the reason is. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I can only imagine that there's going to be a learning curve at the beginning, right? There's going to be a learning curve to kind of figure out what that ratio of protein to fats to fiber is. But once you start, just like when you're organizing and decluttering, like once you start and you get that system and you get into a rhythm, it should be more like automated a little bit, in the sense that you start to know, and your body will also tell you certain things, because you probably haven't been listening to it.
1,000%. So I, first of all, like it is a lot, and we don't do it in a week. Like it's not, I don't hand you a packet and I'm like, here, figure this out. Like we meet for a period of 12 weeks. And during those 12 weeks, every week we're setting very small, sustainable goals. And you're actually learning and understanding a little bit about what foods are doing for you, so you can make educated decisions and feel confident about the decisions that you're making. I'm not just going to sit here and tell you, eat this, this, and this, because what happens when we're done working together? So, and just looking at it from like, it took you however long to get to where you are today, and you've maybe been doing the same things for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is. Like, I feel like I'm still growing in my health journey, and I've been doing this for 10 years. Like I was 14 when I started this, and I feel like I'm growing every single day. And so instead of looking at the journey as like, oh, I have so far to go, it's like I've come so far, and every day is just like a new opportunity to learn something new about myself and like maybe feel a little bit better tomorrow. So that's really what I help the women do.
I love it. I love it. And I mean, I think that's a perfect place for us to kind of just tie it up a little bit. Tell our listeners if they want to work with you. And I know that you do a lot. Your practices very much focus on women that are struggling with PCOS, but I'm sure there are women that might be listening to the show that go, I don't have this, but I might be dealing with something else.
Yeah.
Can they still reach out to you? Can they still, I'm going to, obviously, like I said, I'm going to tell all of you guys, you should definitely follow her and get on her email list, because she's got some like these great recipes and stuff. But can other people work with you as well?
Yeah. So, honestly, so a lot of what I do too is very applicable to, I want to say almost anybody, in that the skills that I'm teaching can translate to someone who doesn't have PCOS, who's maybe pre-diabetic, who's dealing with insulin resistance in that capacity, or is just feeling like really feeling like crap and needs to better balance their hormones. They're feeling super fatigued every day, even though they're getting good night's sleep. Like these things all are intertwined. While I specifically am working with women with PCOS, it's definitely applicable to any other individual. But you can find me on like my Instagram, which I think you'll like add in the bio and everything.
Yes, I will. I will link it up, but just tell them, for if they're listening right now, the name of your Instagram handle.
Yeah. So my business is called Free from PCOS Nutrition. And so you can find my Instagram handle is literally free.from.PCOS. nutrition. So there's just dots in between freaking PCOS nutrition. So you can find me on Instagram, and then I have in my bio, and we'll attach it here too, I have like a PCOS grocery list, but it is totally applicable to really anyone. Like my family members use it who don't have PCOS as just a guideline for kind of establishing some staples, whether it be in the produce department, in the kind of meat and dairy area, or just pantry type staples. It's a really good place to start as far as like go-to healthy ingredients that you can have on hand. So yeah, you can find me on either of those. And if you are interested in working with me too, I have a link in my bio on my Instagram account, but we'll attach it here as well. And you can just fill out, it's like a little quick form questionnaire, and we can chat a little bit more in person, and then kind of see if you think that I would be a good fit for you, and what you're looking for. So you can find me there.
I love it. And of course, again, we will link to everything, Caitlin, in our show notes on our podcast page. It'll also be, if you're on our newsletter, you get it emailed to you. So you'll have everything there. So make sure that we link up to all of that. All right. We're going to take our one last break, and we're going to come back with our hot mess minute and put you back in the hot seat. So sit tight. Hey guys, I just want to tell you about a webinar that I'm going to be hosting in September. So I know it's a couple months away, but we're going to be doing some wait listing for anybody who's interested in attending this webinar. And it's all going to be geared towards how to start or grow a professional organizing business. I did a similar event last year. We had a huge turnout. It was really great. This is a limited event. There's only going to be 100 spots available. The webinar is totally, completely free. But I will also be, just as a quick spoiler alert, I'm going to be opening up my calendar for a group of coaching and mentoring for specifically people that are looking to maybe consider starting a professional organizing business, whether it's a side hustle, or maybe they're going through a new season of life with kids going off to school, or maybe kids, becoming an empty nester, career change, all the different things. A lot of people are not sure what they need in terms of the business side of the business. And so this is going to be an 8-week program. Because my calendar is limited, I'm only going to be opening up for 10 people. So the webinar is a great way for you to kind of learn a little bit about what the coaching mentoring program is going to be about. So if you are interested, my recommendation is sign up, get on the wait list for when the webinar becomes available. That way you can definitely get on the list, and then we'll have links for you to follow whether or not this is something for you. And I hope to see you there. So check out the links in our show notes, check out the links in our bio, and we hope to see you then. Remember, mark the calendar, September 20th. All right, Kate, this has been such a great conversation. I love chatting with you. I love hearing all this because, again, there's so many different layers to eating and nutrition and how it affects our lives and our moods and just all of the things. So this is really, really, I know that there's people out here that are going to just devour all of this, no pun intended. Okay. So we always like to wrap up our episodes by asking our guests a couple questions. So are you a reader? I don't even know if I
am. Wait,
okay.
Can I just chat about that really quick?
Yeah, of course.
One of my, one of the things I struggle with regards to my PCOS is my anxiety and my mental health from it. And I could not read for the longest time, because I couldn't get through a book without just my head being in 80 other places. And I really started better managing my anxiety about a year and a half ago. And I started reading last summer, and I'm now I'm calling myself a reader now. And I love it because it's something I've always wanted to be. And so I love to read now, but a year and a half ago, I literally couldn't finish a book because my anxiety was so bad.
Wow. Yeah. That is so inspiring. That's so great. I love that. I love that. So is there a specific genre that you like to read, or are you just kind of all over the place?
Yeah. So I love obviously kind of reading self-help book type exploration. I like doing that. And then I also love historical fiction. That is my I don't know why. I just like love it. I think I learned so much about the world through it. And I've had some like real aha moments reading some historical fiction books. So yeah.
All right. So now as your underhanded pitch question, so what book is something that either something that you go back to or that you recommend that you would love to just share with our listeners that you're like, this is a great book and referred by Caitlin?
Yeah. So I have two, actually. One I have right
Go for it.
here because it's always on my desk. It is called Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Triboli and Elise Reich. And they are like basically the founders of this idea of intuitive eating. And it is like my Bible. I read it my sophomore year of college, and it completely changed my food philosophy and like how I see nutrition and health. So I recommend that to probably people every other day in my life. So that's one. And my second one is, it's a historical fiction novel. I am obsessed with Kristen Hanna. She's one of my favorite authors. Have you read anything by her?
Wait a second. I feel like I think Josh or Logan has. Tell me the book, because I've definitely heard of her. I don't read a lot of historical fiction, but tell me the book.
So she's most known for Nightingale is like a really popular one that she's written. But I love Of Four Winds. It takes place during the Great Dust Bowl, and it completely changed my perspective on like just like how I see and judge people who are maybe like, it's really easy to like look at someone who's in a less fortunate place and like think that they are not doing enough to get to advance in life. And that was, or at least how I saw things before. And I'm just young and dumb at that point in my life. But that book completely.
So wait, what's it called? I want to make sure. What's it called?
It's called Of Four Winds.
Okay, good. I was right. I was like, I wrote that down, but I was wanting to make sure. Okay. Of Four Winds. All right. Well, I will definitely check. What's her other book? Because I feel like that book doesn't ring a bell, but I feel like the other book.
Nightingale is like, I feel like her most popular novel.
That
one's very good too.
Yeah. I definitely, either she's been recommended on this show or we have it downstairs, or maybe both. I don't know. Okay. So thank you so much. And then our last two questions, and these can be serious, lighthearted, however you want to answer it. In this particular season of your life, where do you feel the most organized and where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess?
Okay, so hot mess, this might sound counterintuitive, but I feel like my schedule's a hot mess right now. Like my Monday through Saturday is like a literal tornado. And it's in some ways a good way, like a good thing, but I just have so much going on and feel like I'm stretched in a million directions and trying to balance 80 things. So that feels messy, but also from a literal perspective, I have my dining room is full of all my bridal shower gifts from last weekend. And I can't even look in there because it's a mess, but I haven't had time to look through it. And I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to do this. So that's a mess.
Well, that's what I call situational clutter. That'll go away. That'll go away. And then let's end on a high note. Where do you feel the most organized?
Well, so this is what's kind of opposite of my week feeling clutter or like crazy. I feel like my routine is very organized. Like I have a very like my Sunday routine is just like my jam. It is just a non-negotiable for me. And I just always feel really good when I check it all off. Like that's just my happy day to get my stuff together.
All right. Well, I happen to know somebody that can help with some of that other calendar clutter that you're struggling with on Monday through Saturday. And so just, I tend to offer unsolicited mentoring advice to Caitlin. So
I appreciate it. Any sort of advice.
I'm always like, I think you should do this. And I think you should do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she did not ask me for an ounce of my opinion. And I, in true Lori Palau form, inject it at all times.
I like started working in a small business when I was 14. And like, if there's anything I've learned is that like, you have to be able to take constructive criticism because it's just boss ass women trying to like help you. That's all they're trying to do.
Well, that's it.
So yeah.
It comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of wanting to see you thrive and succeed because I love everything that you're doing. And on that note, guys, make sure that you check in the show notes, connect up with Caitlin, follow her on Instagram. She, like I said, she's always posting great recipes, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, all kinds of things. So if you're like, I don't know what to make, she's got lots of options for you. And if you think that you need some help kind of just rebalancing yourself, or if you're maybe struggling with something, definitely check her out. And again, thank you guys for tuning in week after week. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all of the reviews, the DMs, everything. That's how we learn what kind of shows you guys want more of. And so please continue to reach out to us, connect up with us. And like I said at the top of the episode, click the subscribe button, not just on your favorite podcast app, but also on YouTube. And until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.